Hi, I'm Max. I'm a facilitator at HSRA, and I'm going to show you guys how to mic some drums. Alright, so we're going to start with the SM57. This one is used for a lot of different instruments in the studio, but on the drums we're going to be using it on the top of the snare and the bottom of the snare. That's why we have two right here. This guy is a AKG D112 Mark II. That's going to be for the kick drum. This guy is a custom ribbon microphone by a brand called Willow River. You're not going to see too many of these, but really any ribbon microphone is great for a good room tone. So we're going to throw that up on that stand over there, up high, to capture the room. I haven't decided yet, but these four mics, this one, this one, this one, and this one, are all small diaphragm condenser microphones. So they're really detailed, they're really good at picking up high end. So I will usually use these for cymbals. I'm going to have two of them over the drums, and then one of them on the hi-hat. And then the last three mics, it's just three of these, and these have these little clips that just go right on the edge of the toms. And you just point the mic down, plug it in, and good to go. So we got our kick drum stand in front of the kick. We got our two snare mic stands. We got our hi-hat, and then our two overhead stands. I always make sure to put the mic on the stand before I raise it up, so I'm not having to like do a balancing act while it's above the kit. Alright, so we're going to start with our overhead mics. A lot of these stands have this smaller thread, and if you look here, that's not going to fit. So we need this little adapter guy. This is a European standard, this is American standard, but you're going to see both. So we just got to screw in our little adapter. And I'll place it like generally over the kit. I'm not looking to be too precise right now. Just kind of get it close-ish to where I want it, and then we're going to position it a little bit more precisely later. One nice trick is you can, if you loosen your stand like this, instead of spinning the whole mic around, you can just spin the stand. Let's do the kick drum next. That's pretty easy. So I'm going to take our AKG D112 Mark II. Screw it into here. I'm going to use my little stand trick here where you just spin the stand here. This is an interesting mic. The front of the mic is actually here. So whatever you want to record, you want to point this at. That looks about right. Alright, next we'll go with our snare mics. I'm going to start with this under snare mic. Make sure that's nice and tight. Since these aren't plugged in yet, I'm just going to put them in a general spot, and then once they're plugged in, that's when we're going to position them. Because if you get a mic perfectly positioned and then you have to mess with it to plug it in, then you're positioning it again. So we'll just kind of get it in the general area, and then this will go on the top of the snare. So the hi-hat's pretty loud. So for these ones, these come with this little thing that you screw into the mic. So I'm going to take the top of the mic off the capsule. I'm going to screw this in line with the body of the mic in the capsule. And what this does is it just lowers the volume that the mic is picking up, so it's not going to clip coming in. Usually for hi-hats, I'll kind of have it pointed down and away from the snare. That way it's just picking up a little bit less of the snare drum. So these kind of clip on the edge like this. So I try to get these, 2 or 3 fingers off the drum head here, and then I just point them straight at the center of the tom. If you wanted a little bit more ring out of your tom, you could go like that, and that's going to capture the. And if you're, if you really want to record your cowbell, you could throw an SM57 or something on that, but I'm just going to assume that's going to be out today. So the next part I usually do in my head, but it's good to write it down if you're a little bit less familiar with where you generally like to plug stuff in. So I'm going to start plugging all my mics in, And I have like a specific order that I do it, but you can really do it in any order that you want. So first, I always go kick drum first. So I'll grab my cable here. And we'll go straight over to the Patchbay. There we go. Make sure that's secure. My snare top, like that. Same thing, snare bottom. Let's do the hi-hat next. Next we'll do the toms. Wrap it around the base there. Plug that in. Same thing here, next tom. Okay, next we'll do this room mic, which I actually haven't set up yet. I want some extra slack here because this is going to go a little bit higher. Cool, that should sound pretty cool. So I got it about, I don't know, 8 feet up. Depends on the height of your ceilings. All right, 2 more. And these ones are also going to go higher after I plug them in. So just make sure to leave a little bit of slack so that it doesn't catch on the cable when I'm raising them. Here, I kind of just like to get all these together generally, something like that. Nice and neat. Big part of it is just having it in a place where the drummer's not going to hit it when they're transitioning. Because if it was over here under the hi-hat, they might smack it when they're going over the hi-hat. So you can have it all the way over here. You can have it really wherever it's the least in the way. I'll usually have it about the same distance as this guy. So we're about, I don't know, 2.5, 3 fingers away from the drum. So usually I'm gonna stand facing the snare in line with the kick. So we're gonna be a little bit off kilter with the drum kit and kind of just, we're kind of going for like a triangle here from the snare with the overhead mics. So this one's looking a little close. So I'm gonna go a little further out with that. So the reason I'm facing the kick when I do this is so that the overheads are picking up the snare and the kick at the same distance, so they're both going to be in the center of the image here. That looks pretty good. And I'll show you my method for measuring it super precisely. All right, so I grabbed a cable. Doesn't really matter, you can use string, you can use an XLR cable. I just grabbed like a instrument guitar cable, that's fine. So I'm just gonna take my cable here, and I'm gonna go from the center of the snare. I'm gonna just hold the cable down and measure towards my mics. Just gotta get it to the point where the cable has tension. It looks like that's about right. We're just barely touching the mic. So over here, that's not even close. So this mic's gonna need to come down. I actually might just put this mic up. The Max method, I don't know. I made it up. So that's just gonna make sure that the mics are the exact same distance away from the snare drum, so the sound waves are gonna arrive at the same time. That way you're not getting any phase issues, right? Yeah, so that's looking like snare is gonna sound like it's right in the middle. What would happen if the mics were not the same distance away from the snare? The snare would either sound like it's on the right or on the left, depending on which mic is closer. So this is just a good way to make sure that your snare is right in the middle. It's still gonna pick up all of our cymbals and our toms and stuff, and get us a nice image of the kit. So we'll just go through the inputs here. So number 1 is gonna be our kick drum. Number 2 and 3 are gonna be our snare top and our snare bottom. Number 4 is our hi-hat. 5, 6, 7 are gonna be all of our tom mics that we clipped on there from small to large. In 8, I put my room mic, and 9, 10, I put my overheads. So I'm starting out by making a Pro Tools session. I already did some of the boring stuff. I just made one mono track for each of our microphones here, and then I named them in order per microphone. So kick, snare, hat, toms, room, overhead, in the order that we plugged them in. Let's go over to the Patchbay here. This is kind of the complicated part. So this is our Patchbay, which basically is just a bunch of inputs and outputs. Up on our top row here, we have 1 through 24, and that's all of our inputs coming in from the other room. So we plugged all those mics in the live room, and those mics are plugged into 1 through 10 here on the top. So we have mics 1 through 10 plugged in here on the Patchbay. So now if I plug into 1 here, now I'm choosing where the kick drum will be plugged in. So I'm going to go into the API 1 through 4 here. So I'm just going to go first 4 mics into those preamps over there. Kick, snare top, snare bottom, hi-hat. Cool, so we got our first 4. Next, we got the toms. Same color cable, just so I know where they're going. And there's 3 toms, so I grabbed 3 blue cables here. So 5, 6, 7. For these, I'm going to use the Universal Audio preamps here. 2 and 3. Next, I just have my room and my overheads. So that's coming out of 8 in that room. I'm just going to put that into API 5. Now I got to decide where I want my overheads to go in 9 and 10. And I'm going to put those into the Neve 1 and 2. That's nice and easy. If we follow these inputs down, so here's input 1 right here. If we follow that down, that is automatically, by that cable behind the Patchbay, going to be normal into A9. And then the next one, 10, 11, 12, and those all just go straight down if you just follow it down. So now we're going to go in Pro Tools and select our inputs. So for our kick, we're going to go A9 because that's where that's set to. And then we'll choose 10, 11, and 12 for our hi-hat. And then our 3 toms, we'll go back over here. Toms 1, 2, and 3 are plugged into our UAD preamps. So then take note of that and go to these 3 and select. There's a million on here that you don't need to worry about, but this is where we're going to start right here. Be 1, 2, and 3. 2 and 3. Cool. And then our room, I just put into the next API preamp, so that's going to be 13. So we'll go in here and select a 13. And then for our 2 overhead mics, we've got those going into the Neve. So that's going to be we're going to follow it all the way down from where they're coming in here. So that's going to go A1 and 2. So we got all our inputs. This is the part where it's nice to have someone with you. So we're kind of guessing here. Usually I would be doing this with someone else playing the drums so that we could see all of our levels and stuff. This pad button right here just decreases the volume so that we don't get any distortion, because the kick and snare are very loud sources. So we're just going to turn that pad on. Usually it's a little bit too loud, so I just kind of put that on by default. Since we have 2 mics on the snare here and they're essentially pointing at each other, we need to flip the phase or the polarity of one of those mics so that they don't cancel out. And then the hi-hat is a condenser mic, so that means that it's going to need phantom power, so we're going to turn that on. The next one is the room mic, and that's kind of out of order here, but it's just also on this preamp, so just that. Let's do the overheads next. So make sure that's on, hit the power, check the lights, Perfect. So I'll turn these to about halfway. To turn phantom on these preamps, you push in the trim knob. So let's pull up the software. Scroll over. And B123, these could be better labeled, but it's just the first three preamps that you see with the dials here. Usually for toms, I'll set these around like 25 dB of gain. If it is too quiet or too loud, we can always adjust that later. But that's a good starting point. And those are dynamic mics, so they don't need any phantom power or anything like that. Record, see if everything works. So really anything, you don't even have to be a drum player to check this. Check my kick. Check my snare. Cool, toms. Cool, hi-hat. Crashes. Cool, and then I'll just play a little like. Cool, yeah, sounds good to me. At that point, I'd be pretty much ready to get going recording.